Our story begins not with a cape or a cowl, but with a greasy burger and a side of extra crispy fries. Meet Randy, a man whose passion for particle physics was only rivaled by his love for a good gut bomb. Randy wasn't what you'd call a scientific superstar. He wasn't splitting atoms or winning Nobel Prizes. Randy was an accelerator technician, which, in layman's terms, meant he pushed buttons, flipped switches, and made sure the scientists at the ultra-nucleonic research facility didn't accidentally blow up the Tri-County area. Not the most glamorous job, sure, but it paid the bills and kept Randy in caffeine and questionable cafeteria chili. Besides, he secretly harbored a belief that one day, maybe, just maybe, he'd witness something truly extraordinary. Little did he know his wish was about to be granted in the most unexpected and flatulent way possible. It was a Tuesday or maybe a Thursday. Time wasn't exactly Randy's forte. He was on his lunch break, hunched over a crossword puzzle and a plate of what the cafeteria bravely called pizza. Suddenly a high-pitched whine, like 1,000 dentists' drills singing in unison, pierced the air. Lights flickered, coffee mugs rattled on their saucers, and a nearby intern swore he saw his reflection do the Macarena. Everyone froze, their gazes instinctively drawn to the large digital clock on the wall. It was 1:27 p.m., precisely 3 minutes before the scheduled test firing of the facility's brand spanking new particle accelerator. A wave of nervous murmurs rippled through the room. The accelerator was the facility's pride and joy, a marvel of engineering capable of smashing atoms together at speeds that made even light blush. But it was also notoriously temperamental, prone to the occasional hiccup or two, or, in this case, a full-blown ear-splitting shriek. Randy, ever the dutiful employee, even with a mouthful of questionable pizza, decided to investigate. He wiped his hands on his already stained lab coat, grabbed his trusty clipboard, mostly used for doodling spaceships and aliens, and waddled out of the cafeteria and towards the control room. The closer he got to the control room, the louder the whine became. It morphed into a deep, guttural hum, vibrating the floor beneath his feet. Then, without warning, the sound vanished. An eerie silence descended, broken only by the frantic beeping of alarms and the pounding of Randy's own heart. He threw open the control room door, expecting to see chaos, maybe even a small fire. Instead, he found his co-workers huddled together, staring at a bank of monitors displaying a baffling anomaly. It seemed the accelerator had indeed fired, but something was different, something unexpected. The monitors displayed a swirling vortex of energy, crackling and spitting like a cosmic microwave on overdrive. But it was the readings that had everyone stumped. Energy levels were off the charts, but not in a good way. It was like someone had tried to bake a cake with fireworks instead of flour. "What in the blazes happened here?" Randy exclaimed, his voice barely audible above the cacophony of alarms. Dr. Lisa Quantum, the resident genius and owner of the world's most impressive collection of pocket protectors, swiveled in her chair, her face a mask of bewildered concern. "It seems," she began, pushing her glasses up her nose, "that during the particle collision, an unforeseen byproduct was generated." "Byproduct?" Randy echoed, scratching his head. "What kind of byproduct?" Before Dr. Quantum could answer, a pungent aroma like 1,000 rotten eggs wrestling a skunk in a garbage disposal filled the air. Randy's stomach lurched, and he instinctively clamped his hand over his mouth. One by one, the scientists and technicians in the room began to gag. "Oh, dear God," someone groaned. "What died in here?" But Randy already suspected the answer, and it wasn't pretty or particularly solid. The smell hit them like a freight train loaded with durian fruit and gym socks. It was potent, pervasive, and utterly unforgettable. "Sweet mother of protons!" Dr. Quantum sputtered, her face contorting in disgust. "What in the name of Marie Curie is that unholy stench? It smells like—" a brave intern began, then paused, seemingly overwhelmed by the sheer olfactory assault. Randy, his eyes watering, finished, the intern's thought, like someone bottled the aftermath of a chili cook-off in a porta-potty during a heatwave. The room collectively shuddered. Even the most hardened scientists, veterans of countless chemical concoctions and biological experiments, were struggling to maintain their composure. This wasn't just any smell. This was something else entirely. This was advanced stink. "Evacuate the lab," Dr. Quantum finally managed, her voice barely audible over the symphony of gagging and sputtering. "Everyone out, now!" The evacuation was swift and chaotic, a testament to the sheer potency of the unknown aroma. Within seconds, the control room was empty. The only evidence of their presence, the lingering stench and a half-eaten donut abandoned on a console. Outside, in the relative freshness of the hallway, the assembled scientists and technicians gasped for air, their faces pale and drawn. Dr. Quantum, her usually impeccable lab coat now bearing a suspicious brown stain, tried to regain control of the situation. "All right, everyone," she wheezed. "Let's try to remain calm. Clearly something highly unusual has occurred. We need to assess the situation, determine the source of this odor, and take appropriate measures." As Dr. Quantum droned on about containment protocols and hazard assessments, Randy stood at the back of the crowd, a strange feeling creeping up his gut. It wasn't just the lingering stench, although that certainly wasn't helping. It was something else, a nagging sense of familiarity, like he'd encountered this particular brand of olfactory unpleasantness before. Then it hit him. The chili. The extra spicy, double-meat, gut-busting chili he'd devoured for lunch. The same chili that had been giving him the rumbles ever since. The same chili that he now realized with a sinking feeling had likely chosen this precise moment to make its grand exit. "Oh man," Randy muttered under his breath, his face flushing crimson. "This is bad. This is really, really bad." He had a sneaking suspicion that the unforeseen byproduct Dr. Quantum was so concerned about wasn't some exotic new particle or dangerous radiation. No, he feared it was something far more personal and far more embarrassing. While Randy grappled with his newfound suspicion and contemplated the social ramifications of clearing a room with his own personal brand of biological warfare, inside the lab, something extraordinary was happening. The pungent cloud, now pulsing with a faint ethereal glow, began to coalesce, taking on a vaguely humanoid shape. This wasn't just a bad case of indigestion, this was something else entirely. This was sentient, and it was about to become a hero, or at the very least, a very unusual crime-fighting force. Back in the hallway, the scientists, still oblivious to the sentient stench brewing in their midst, continued to debate the best course of action. Little did they know, their world was about to be turned upside down, or perhaps right side up, depending on how you looked at it. The sentient stench, newly formed and brimming with an unknown energy, drifted through the facility unseen and undetected. It had no eyes, no mouth, no discernible features, yet it possessed a strange awareness, a sense of purpose that belied its humble origins. It moved through the facility like a phantom, a silent observer to the everyday dramas unfolding within its walls, and that's when it happened. A scream, muffled but filled with terror, echoed from a nearby office. The sentient stench, drawn by the sound of distress, drifted towards the source. Little did it know, its journey had just begun, a journey that would see it transform from a humble byproduct of bad chili into a legend, whispered about in hushed tones and accompanied by a healthy dose of air freshener. The muffled scream led the sentient stench to a small, cluttered office. Papers were strewn everywhere, a half-eaten sandwich lay abandoned on the desk, and in the corner, cowering behind a filing cabinet, was a young intern named Dave. Dave, known more for his coffee-fetching abilities than his bravery, was trapped. Looming over him, a hulking figure brandishing a stapler, the horror threatened to make off with the intern's most prized possession, a limited edition holographic trading card featuring Dr. Lisa Quantum in a rare I Love Protons t-shirt. The sentient stench, new to the world and its many complexities, didn't quite grasp the gravity of the situation. It saw a shadowy figure, heard a whimper of fear and smelled, well, it smelled fear. which to be fair smelled a lot like stale coffee and anxiety, but still, it was a distress signal of sorts. Instinct took over. The sentient stench, fueled by a strange sense of purpose and maybe a hint of lingering indigestion, decided to act. It swirled faster, its ethereal glow intensifying, and with a silent whoosh, it launched itself at the would-be thief. The thief, caught completely off guard, yelped in surprise as he was knocked off balance. The stapler flew from his grasp, bouncing off a framed picture of Albert Einstein sticking his tongue out. How ironic. The sentient stench, a silent, invisible force, had struck its first blow. Dave, initially too terrified to even scream properly, peeked out from behind the filing cabinet. He watched in disbelief as his attacker stumbled around, clutching his head and muttering curses. The air, however, was filled with something other than fear now. It was a familiar, pungent aroma, but this time it seemed different, almost heroic. The thief, disoriented and none too pleased with the sudden turn of events, regained his footing. He glared at the spot where he'd last seen his target, but Dave was gone, vanished. The only evidence of his presence was a faint scent of stale coffee and a single dropped trading card. "What the thief muttered, rubbing his head. "Where'd he go? And what is that smell?" Unbeknownst to the thief, he'd just become the first victim of the Silent Avenger's rather unorthodox brand of justice. The sentient stench, having successfully scared off the bully, now hovered over the dropped trading card, its ethereal glow pulsing softly. It didn't speak, of course, because, well, how can a fart speak? But somehow Dave, cowering under his desk in a far corner of the lab, understood. The message was clear. You dropped this. It wasn't exactly a booming superhero catchphrase, but it was a start. News of the incident spread through the ultra-nucleonic research facility like wildfire, fueled by exaggeration, speculation, and an unhealthy dose of "did you smell that?" The thief, nursing a bruised ego and a lingering odor he couldn't quite place, claimed he'd been attacked by a ghost. A smelly ghost, but a ghost nonetheless. Most of the staff dismissed it as a case of cafeteria-induced hallucinations. Randy, however, wasn't so sure. He'd been having his own share of strange experiences lately. Whenever he felt a rumble in his gut, a faint green glow seemed to emanate from him, accompanied by a strange sense of purpose. He tried explaining this to Dr. Quantum, but she'd simply patted him on the shoulder and suggested he lay off the chili cheese fries. Meanwhile, the sentient stench, emboldened by its first taste of heroism, continued to patrol the facility, a silent guardian, a watchful protector, well, you get the idea. It wasn't long before opportunity, disguised as a missing pizza delivery, came knocking. It was late, the labs were mostly deserted, and security guard Mike was bored. He sat at his desk, munching on a donut and trying to stay awake while monitoring the security cameras. Suddenly, on screen 6, he saw it. A shadowy figure, sneaking down the hallway, a pizza box tucked under their arm. Now, Mike was a simple man. He enjoyed his job, his donuts, and his weekly poker night with the guys. What he didn't enjoy was someone messing with his pizza. He'd ordered that pepperoni extravaganza special hours ago, and he wasn't about to let some greasy-haired thief get away with it. Little did Mike know he wouldn't have to do a thing. The Silent Avenger was already on the case. Attracted by the scent of pepperoni and injustice, the sentient stench drifted towards the unsuspecting thief, leaving a faint green haze in its wake. The thief, oblivious to the invisible force closing in, rounded a corner and bumped straight into, well, nothing, or so it seemed. One moment he was admiring his stolen pizza, the next he was sprawled on the floor, the pizza box sailing through the air like a frisbee on a caffeine high. The pizza landed with a splat on the head of a passing scientist who let out a startled yelp. The thief, momentarily stunned, looked around for his attacker, but there was no one there. Just that smell, that god-awful yet strangely familiar smell. The sentient stench, having once again triumphed over evil, or at least petty theft, swirled in satisfaction. It had found its calling. It wasn't just a byproduct of bad chili, it was a force for good. It was the Silent Avenger, protector of the innocent, defender of justice, and all-around champion of not stealing people's pizza. Word of the pizza thief's unfortunate encounter with the phantom flatulence, as it was now being called, reached the outside world. The ultra-nucleonic research facility, once a bastion of scientific secrecy, found itself at the center of a media frenzy. Reporters camped outside the facility, eager for a whiff of the mysterious hero. Theories abounded, ranging from government experiments gone wrong to alien invasions by particularly pungent extraterrestrials. Through it all, the Silent Avenger continued its silent patrol, righting wrongs, rescuing kittens from trees, and generally making the world a slightly smellier but undeniably safer place. And so the legend was born. The legend of the Silent Avenger, a hero who proved that even the most humble, the most unexpected, and yes, the most malodorous of us can rise to the occasion and answer the call to duty. Just remember, the next time you feel a rumble in your gut, think twice before blaming the dog. It might just be the Silent Avenger passing through, leaving a little justice in its wake. Fame, it's a gas. The Silent Avenger was a media darling. Newspapers ran daily cartoons depicting a swirling green cloud with a halo, foiling bank robbers and rescuing damsels in distress. The mayor, a portly man with a penchant for spicy burritos, publicly declared the Silent Avenger the city's official protector, much to the chagrin of the police chief, a man who took great pride in his department's ability to solve crimes without the assistance of invisible, odoriferous superheroes. Randy, meanwhile, became an overnight celebrity as the suspected source of the Silent Avenger. He was hounded by reporters, offered lucrative book deals, and invited to appear on every talk show from Good Morning Metropolis to Late Night with Jimmy Kimmel. He even received a sponsorship offer from a leading brand of air freshener, which he politely declined, citing a conflict of interest. After all, what kind of message would it send if the Silent Avenger's supposed alter ego was hawking odor-eliminating sprays? It just didn't sit right with him. One particularly tense afternoon, the city held a ceremony in the Silent Avenger's honor. A giant statue, sculpted from recycled air fresheners naturally, was erected in the town square. The mayor, sweating profusely in his best suit, stood at the podium, ready to deliver a heartfelt speech about courage, heroism, and the importance of a balanced digestive system. The crowd roared with anticipation, their noses twitching with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. Randy, feeling a familiar rumble in his gut, excused himself from the VIP section and discreetly slipped away to a nearby alley. He knew the routine by now. Big event, lots of pressure, Silent Avenger time. He just wished it didn't always coincide with his chili cheese fry cravings. As the mayor reached the climax of his speech, extolling the Silent Avenger's virtues and proclaiming a citywide day of intestinal fortitude, a faint green glow emanated from the alley behind City Hall. The crowd, mistaking it for a special effect, gasped in awe. The mayor, however, felt a cold dread creep up his spine. He knew that glow. He'd seen it before, usually reflected in the terrified eyes of his constituents whenever he indulged in his favorite spicy burrito joint. The Silent Avenger, summoned by a surge of civic pride and possibly the lingering aroma of the mayor's lunch, materialized behind the podium, its ethereal glow illuminating the mayor's rapidly paling face. The crowd, oblivious to the mayor's impending doom, cheered wildly, their applause echoing through the square. The mayor, his bowels churning with a mixture of fear and indigestion, tried to maintain his composure. He cleared his throat, attempting a weak smile, but it was no use. His face contorted in a grimace of pure intestinal distress. He knew he couldn't hold it in any longer. The Silent Avenger, sensing the mayor's predicament and misinterpreting it as a sign of distress, swirled closer, its ethereal glow intensifying with concern. The mayor, eyes wide with panic, tried to warn the invisible hero, but it was too late. A low rumble, like a distant earthquake originating from the mayor's digestive tract, shook the podium. The crowd, their applause reaching a fever pitch, fell silent. A hush descended upon the square, broken only by the sound of the mayor's knees knocking together. The moment of truth had arrived. Section 4, a nose for trouble, a gut for justice. The Silent Avenger, its senses on high alert, immediately detected the source of the disturbance. It wasn't a bomb, it wasn't a laser beam, and it certainly wasn't a catchy, villainous monologue. No, this was something far more potent, far more primal. This was an epic butt burp of unprecedented proportions. Now the Silent Avenger had encountered its fair share of pungent aromas in its short but eventful career as a superhero. It had dispersed tear gas clouds, neutralized stink bombs, and even survived a close encounter with a dumpster fire behind a fish market. But this was something else entirely. This was a symphony of stench, a concerto of cologne, a veritable opera of odor. The crowd, their initial awe replaced by a growing sense of olfactory unease, began to stir. Noses wrinkled, eyes watered, and a few brave souls even dared to whisper the dreaded question, "What is that smell?" The mayor, his face now a fascinating shade of chartreuse, could only stand there, a monument to digestive misfortune, as the Silent Avenger unleashed its full fury. Section 5, the Silent Avenger versus the Malodorous Menacer. The Silent Avenger, its ethereal glow pulsing with righteous indignation, swirled around the unfortunate mayor, creating a vortex of wind that whipped the mayor's speech notes into a frenzy and sent pigeons scattering for cover. The crowd, caught in the crossfire of the Silent Avenger's gusty wrath, scattered like startled sheep. They coughed, they sputtered, they gasped for air that seemed to grow thinner with each passing second. Even the pigeons, veterans of city life and connoisseurs of questionable park snacks, took one whiff of the air and decided to seek higher ground. The mayor, his eyes watering and his stomach churning, clung to the podium for dear life, his carefully crafted speech forgotten. He'd faced down angry constituents, survived budget cuts, and even endured countless rubber chicken dinners, but nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared him for this. The Silent Avenger, its mission of mercy mistaken for an act of aggression, continued its assault on the senses. It had never encountered a stench so potent, so utterly defiant of all known laws of physics and good taste. This wasn't just a case of bad digestion, this was a declaration of war, a challenge issued from the depths of the mayor's bowels. Section 6, can't touch this stink. News of the incident at City Hall spread faster than a rumor in a high school cafeteria. The media, initially eager to celebrate the Silent Avenger's heroism, went into overdrive, churning out headlines that ranged from the sensational Silent Avenger goes rogue, mayor gassed at ceremony, to the downright absurd breaking wind, has the Silent Avenger finally met its match. The scientific community, initially baffled by the Silent Avenger's very existence, now found themselves grappling with a whole new set of questions. Could a sentient stench be defeated by a mere biological function? Was there a limit to the Silent Avenger's odor-neutralizing abilities? And perhaps most importantly, what in the world had the mayor eaten for lunch? Meanwhile, deep within the bowels of the city's sewer system, a sinister force stirred. The Malodorous Menacer, a villainous entity born from years of accumulated garbage, sewage and questionable leftovers, had been watching, waiting for its moment to strike. And now, thanks to the mayor's unfortunate digestive predicament, that moment had arrived. Section 7. In the bowels of the enemy's lair. The Malodorous Menacer, a grotesque amalgamation of everything society deemed gross and unpleasant, chuckled to itself, a sound that resembled a garbage disposal gargling with mayonnaise. It had been biding its time, plotting its revenge on a city that had dared to banish it to the stinky underworld of sewers and landfills. And now, with the Silent Avenger distracted by the mayor's accidental assault on good taste, the time was ripe for revenge. The Malodorous Menacer's plan was simple, yet deviously effective. It would unleash its own brand of olfactory warfare upon the city, a wave of stench so potent, so utterly repulsive, that it would make the Silent Avenger's previous exploits smell like a field of daisies in comparison. The city would be brought to its knees, begging for mercy, begging for nose plugs, begging for anything to stop the assault on their senses. And then, with the city reeling and the Silent Avenger incapacitated by the sheer overwhelming stench of it all, the malodorous menacer would rise from the sewers, claiming dominion over a world too weak, too disgusted to resist its malodorous might. It was a plan so evil, so utterly vile, that even the pigeons wouldn't touch it. Section 8. Victory smells sweet. Well, not really. Back at City Hall, the Silent Avenger, its senses overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of the mayor's accidental attack, finally retreated. It swirled away, leaving behind a faint green haze and a lingering aroma that would forever be etched in the annals of City Hall lore. The mayor, his face slowly returning to its normal shade of pale, straightened his tie and attempted to salvage what was left of his dignity. It was a futile effort, of course. The damage was done. From that day forward, he would forever be known as Mayor Blowhard, a title he wore with a mixture of shame and a strange sense of pride. The crowd, their senses slowly returning to normal, dispersed, carrying with them tales of the Silent Avenger's unexpected attack and the mayor's unfortunate digestive mishap. Little did they know, a far greater threat loomed on the horizon. A threat that would test the Silent Avenger's mettle, challenge its very essence, and force it to confront the true meaning of heroism in a world where sometimes the best defense is a really, really good air freshener. Section 1. The city that stunk together. The malodorous menacer's plan unfolded with terrifying precision. From the depths of the city's underbelly, a wave of stench washed over Metropolis, clinging to buildings, infiltrating homes, and generally making life unbearable for anyone with a functioning olfactory bulb. This wasn't just your average garbage day aroma. This was a symphony of stink, a chorus of putridity, a veritable orchestra of olfactory offence. It was the kind of smell that could curl nose hairs at 50 paces, clear out a crowded theatre in seconds, and make a skunk reconsider its life choices. The city, once a vibrant hub of commerce, culture, and questionable street food, descended into chaos. Traffic ground to a halt as drivers abandoned their vehicles, preferring the questionable air quality on foot to the suffocating stench inside their cars. Picnics in the park turned into gagging fests. Romantic walks along the river became desperate sprints for the nearest bottle of air freshener. The Silent Avenger, its ethereal glow flickering with a mixture of disgust and determination, braved the miasma, its invisible form navigating the swirling currents of stench like a ship on a stormy sea. The malodorous menacer had underestimated its opponent. The Silent Avenger wasn't just any hero, it was a product of bad chili, a veteran of countless cafeteria burritos, a connoisseur of all things pungent. It had been forged in the fires of indigestion, tempered by the trials of lactose intolerance, and honed to a fine point by years of questionable takeout choices. And so, as the city's inhabitants cowered in their homes, armed with nose plugs, gas masks, and prayers to the gods of good ventilation, the Silent Avenger prepared for battle. This wasn't just a fight for justice, it was a battle for the very soul of Metropolis, a showdown between good taste and bad, between fresh air and foul, between a hero born from a moment of digestive distress and a villain fueled by the collective stench of society's worst habits. The stage was set, the aroma was palpable, and the outcome, much like the air itself, was decidedly uncertain. Section 3. Randy to the rescue. Sort of. Meanwhile, Randy, blissfully unaware of the epic olfactory battle raging across the city, was enjoying a rare moment of peace and quiet. He'd been given a few days off from work, mostly to escape the media circus surrounding his supposed connection to the Silent Avenger, and partly because even the most dedicated scientists need a break from discussing the finer points of sentient flatulence. He was flipping through channels, trying to decide between a documentary about the migratory patterns of Canadian geese and a reality show featuring competitive cheese sculpting when a news bulletin flashed across the screen. It showed footage of the city engulfed in a sickly green cloud, accompanied by a frantic reporter's voiceover describing the stench as a cross between a dumpster fire and 1,000 gym socks left to fester in a sauna. Randy, recognizing the telltale green hue of the cloud and feeling a familiar rumble in his gut, groaned. "Oh man, not again," he muttered, clutching his stomach. "I told them I needed to lay off the chili cheese fries." Little did he know those chili cheese fries might just be the key to saving the city. Section 4, The Wind of Change and It Smells Like Victory. The battle raged in the skies above Metropolis, a silent, invisible struggle between two forces of nature, one born from accidental heroism, the other from deliberate malice. The Silent Avenger, its ethereal glow flickering under the onslaught of the malodorous menace's stench, realized it needed a new strategy. It couldn't simply overpower this foe, it had to outsmart it, and that's when it hit it. Or rather, Randy did. At that very moment, miles away in his comfortably furnished living room, Randy, overcome by a sudden and urgent craving for spicy food, decided to indulge in his guilty pleasure, a triple cheese, extra jalapeno burrito from his favorite food truck. Burrito blast from the past. The effect was instantaneous and surprisingly global. A surge of energy, fueled by Randy's questionable dietary choices, coursed through the Silent Avenger, invigorating it, empowering it, and most importantly, making it smell significantly more potent. Section 5, A Hero's Reward, Hold the Pepto. The malodorous menacer, caught off guard by the sudden shift in the olfactory battlefield, recoiled, its stench momentarily overpowered by the sheer audacity of Randy's burrito-fueled energy blast. It had underestimated its opponent, mistaking its previous restraint for weakness. It had never encountered an adversary who could not only withstand its stench, but actually weaponize it, turning its greatest strength into its greatest vulnerability. The tables had turned. The Silent Avenger, now a swirling vortex of green and orange energy, pressed its advantage, driving the malodorous menacer back towards the sewers, its stench dissipating with every blast of Randy's newfound power. The city, slowly emerging from its self-imposed quarantine, watched in awe as the sky above transformed into a kaleidoscope of color and smell, a testament to the epic battle being waged on their behalf. And then, as quickly as it had begun, it was over. The malodorous menacer, defeated and thoroughly outstunk, retreated to the sewers, vowing revenge, but knowing deep down that it had met its match. Section 6, Silence is golden, but a little air freshener never hurts. With the malodorous menacer vanquished and the city slowly returning to its normal, slightly less pungent self, the Silent Avenger retreated once more, its mission accomplished, its legend secured. It would continue to watch over Metropolis, a silent guardian, a watchful protector, a constant reminder that even in a world obsessed with appearances, it's what's inside that truly counts. As for Randy, he finished his burrito, oblivious to the role he'd played in saving the city. He burped, a satisfied smile spreading across his face, and reached for another. After all, being a hero's digestive system was hungry work, and so life in Metropolis returned to normal, or at least as normal as things could be in a city that had a sentient fart for a superhero. The air was a little fresher, the streets a little cleaner, and the citizens a little more appreciative of the simple pleasures in life. A good meal, a breath of fresh air, and the comforting knowledge that sometimes the most unlikely of heroes can rise to the occasion, even if they do smell a bit like chili cheese fries in the process, because in the end, silence might be golden, but a little air freshener never hurts.